You know, we think we have a pretty good idea of how the world is run. But what if the reality of how governments make decisions is completely different from the picture we have in our heads? Today, let's pull back the curtain and look at how the biggest choices that shape our lives are really made.
I mean, it seems straightforward, right? We go to the polls, we elect our leaders, and we just assume they're the ones in the driver's seat making these clear, calculated choices for all of us. But is that picture really accurate, or is it maybe just a little too simple? This right here, this is the classic image of power. You've got the leader, their top advisors, all calmly charting a clear course. It's the ideal of rational, top-down decision-making. It looks decisive, it looks clear, but what if it's mostly a myth? That whole idea of a perfectly logical process, well, let's call it the rational policy myth. We're going to dig into the textbook theory of how policy should be made, and then we'll see why it so often just completely falls apart in the real world. So at the very heart of this myth is something called the rational actor model. The core idea is that governments act like a single super logical person, carefully weighing all the options to pick the absolute best one to achieve a really clear goal. On paper, the process looks so clean, doesn't it? First, you identify a problem, let's say rising crime. Step 2, you set a clear objective, lower it by 10%. Then you evaluate every possible solution, from more police to social programs. And finally, you just pick the single best option. It seems simple, clean, perfectly rational. Yeah, the problem is reality is messy. Information is never perfect. People have conflicting goals, and, well, people are people. This ideal, rational model almost never survives its first contact with the real world.
So, if that clean, rational model is basically a fantasy, what takes its place? Let's dive into the messy, complicated reality of how decisions actually get made in the halls of power.
One of the most powerful explanations for what's really going on is a concept called incrementalism. The idea here is to just forget about grand, sweeping plans. Real policymaking is often just about making these small, cautious little tweaks to what we're already doing. It's less of a visionary leap and more of just one small step at a time.
A political scientist named Charles Lindblom absolutely nailed this idea with a fantastic phrase. He called it the science of muddling through. It's not about finding the perfect solution. It's about navigating a really complex world by just kind of feeling your way forward.
And wow, when you put these two models side by side, the difference is just night and day. The rational model, the myth, is all about bold, optimal solutions to solve a problem for good. But incrementalism, it's more about finding a good enough fix that just moves you away from the immediate issue. It's really the difference between trying to solve a problem versus just managing it.
But these aren't just abstract theories happening in a vacuum. They're shaped by real people with all their own biases and psychological quirks. And that means it really, really matters who gets a seat at the table. And this leads us to this incredibly dangerous phenomenon called groupthink. This is what happens when a team of really smart people all want to agree with each other so badly that they just stop thinking critically. The pressure to conform can lead to some disastrously bad decisions because nobody wants to be the one person to speak up and rock the boat. And look, we're back to this image, even right here, in the supposed center of global power. Think about it. If the leader speaks first and really passionately argues for one option, it puts this immense pressure on everyone else to just fall in line. Individual doubts get swallowed, and the group gets this totally false impression that everyone is in complete agreement.
So, if decisions are actually incremental and super prone to things like groupthink, who are the key players navigating this messy reality? Well, a lot of the time, it's not the politicians we see on TV. It's the hidden players, the ones behind the scenes, the bureaucrats.
So on paper, the bureaucracy, that's the huge body of non-elected state officials, has a very clear set of jobs. They administer programs, they offer advice to politicians, they engage with different interest groups, and they provide stability when governments change. They are the engine room of the state. But that official job description, it really doesn't tell the whole story. If they're just supposed to be implementing the decisions of our elected leaders, how have they become so incredibly influential in their own right? Well, think about this fundamental imbalance of power. Ministers, they're temporary. They come and go with elections. Bureaucrats, they're permanent. Ministers are political generalists. Bureaucrats are specialists who've maybe spent decades on one single topic. And maybe most important of all, politicians are always vastly outnumbered. So, where does all this power come from? It really boils down to three key things. First, their strategic position. They literally control the flow of information to the politicians. Second, that logistical advantage. They are always there. And third, their status as the experts. At the end of the day, politicians often only know what the civil servants decide to tell them, and that is an incredible amount of power. When you start to see just how much power rests in the hands of unelected officials, it forces us to ask a really fundamental and challenging question for any democracy. Who is really in control here?
And here it is. This is the core dilemma. In a democracy, power is supposed to flow from the people. But if so much real, effective power rests with these permanent, unelected officials, how do we make sure they're actually accountable to the public they're supposed to be serving?
Now, over the years, governments have tried different ways to get a handle on this. You've got things like ministerial responsibility, where a politician has to take the blame. Some leaders try to politicize the system by appointing their own loyalists. Others build their own counter-bureaucracies just to get a second opinion. But honestly, none of these are perfect solutions to this really deep-seated dilemma.
But hang on. Before we conclude that a powerful bureaucracy is always a problem, it's worth looking at a totally different perspective. In a country like Botswana, a professional, powerful civil service is often credited as one of the cornerstones of its success, providing the stability and expertise needed for real growth.
That example from Botswana really forces us to ask a more nuanced question. Is this concentration of unelected power always a threat to democracy? Or could it sometimes be a force for good, providing the kind of stability and expertise that politics alone just can't?
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. Is this vast, powerful administrative state an unavoidable bug in the system that we have to constantly try and fix? Or is it maybe an essential, perhaps even a beneficial feature of governing a complex, modern society? The answer isn't simple, and it gets to the very heart of how power really works.